Prime Minister Narendra Modi has taken charge in Delhi. During his election campaign, Mr. Modi and his senior party colleagues had threatened to crack down on what they described as illegal migrants from Bangladesh, especially during their campaign in West Bengal and the states of Northeast. That has raised fears that there would be attempts to push back such people again, as it happened during the previous BJP-led India government in the late 1990s. Many of us, of course, do remember the so-called Operation Pushback in the early 1990s. On assuming power, though, Mr. Modi has, however, sent positive signals that he is keen to push ahead deals like Tista water sharing that could not be concluded during the Congress-led EPA government. Indian High Commissioner in Dhaka, Pankaj Saran, has been saying for a while now that a regime change in Delhi will not affect relations with Bangladesh. He had said this much before Mr. Modi took over, even when BJP leaders, including Mr. Modi himself, were threatening to pack off all alleged illegal migrants from Bangladesh. We now have Mr. Saran in our studio to answer our many questions on the future of India-Bangladesh relations. But let us begin by asking him, when is India's new Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj will visit Dhaka? High Commissioner, welcome to our studio. So, have you really finalized the dates of your Foreign Minister's visit to Dhaka?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me over to this very, very important program. The question of high-level visits between India and Bangladesh is still under discussion, and we're working out the exact dates of the visit, and we will be in a position to make an official announcement when the details have been settled.
So, any likely dates?
Not yet. Dates are under discussion, and as and when we finalize and reach agreement with the government of Bangladesh, we would be making an official announcement.
Our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had asked Mr. Modi to make his first foreign visit to Bangladesh. Instead, he's going to Bhutan, and probably his next stop would be Tokyo, if I'm not wrong. But he's sending his foreign minister to Bangladesh on her first visit. What can we in Dhaka read into this?
Well, I don't think it's appropriate to actually discuss, communications or correspondence between two heads of government. So that's the first part of what I would like to say. But having said that, the fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister Modi has accepted the invitation to visit Bangladesh. He's very honored by the invitation, and he definitely looks forward to meeting Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in the months ahead. And the more important point from my point of view is, how do we proceed with the relationship, and what direction it will take, and what would be the contours and the agenda and the priorities that would be set. So I would like to focus more on the substantive aspects of the relationship.
So does that mean Mr. Modi now wants to assure Bangladesh of its of moving ahead with India's sovereign commitments, but is not in a position to actually go ahead with deals like the Tista water sharing? And would he like to come to Dhaka only when he's in a position to sign the deal?
Well, I think there is too much speculation in that question. What I would like to say is that this government, the new government, is committed to its relationship with Bangladesh. I think this was made very, very clear when the Honorable Speaker of the Bangladesh Parliament called on the Prime Minister on the very first day he took over as Prime Minister. And that was a very useful and a very important meeting, because it gave the leaderships of both countries to sit face to face, and they discussed a whole range of issues. And the commitment of this government to taking forward the relationship with Bangladesh was spelt out in very, very clear terms. And it was said that the new government in India is not only committed to maintaining, but also building upon the momentum of the relationship that we have seen in the last few years.
The last time the BJP was in power, New Delhi announced it had no favorites in Dhaka. Former National Security Advisor Brajesh Mishra travelled to Dhaka to congratulate the new Prime Minister Khalidi Zia at that time, in what was seen as a clear message that India was prepared to do business with non-Awami League partners or regimes, which is why many BNP leaders seemed very happy when the BJP came back to power this time. Would you now see a return to the policy of no favorites in Dhaka?
Well, I wouldn't put it in such stark terms. What I would like to say is that the government in India does not, as a matter of principle, interfere in the internal affairs of Bangladesh. The question of who leads Bangladesh or who is elected by the people of Bangladesh is something which the people of Bangladesh alone have to decide. As far as India is concerned, we have a track record of dealing with every single government that has actually been in power since the liberation of Bangladesh in 1971. And I think that track record speaks for itself. And with every government, we have made some headway in the relationship in some areas. Yes, admittedly, there have been periods when we have not been able to move as fast as we would have wished. But the fact is that over a period of the last 40 years, the relationship has progressed on almost all sectors. And we are today at a stage when, if you look at the full relationship in its full manifestation, I can say that it is a much more comprehensive and a better integrated relationship than it was in the past.
Coming back to these elections, our January 5th elections, the West, especially the US, has pressed for fresh elections here, saying that January 5th elections were inadequate. And India had then defended that it was a constitutional necessity. Would your new government hold the same view now?
Well, I think at that time what we said was what you have just mentioned, that when we were asked about the election, we had simply observed as a matter of fact that in our view this was a constitutional requirement. We had also said in the same statement that we hoped that the democratic processes would be allowed to continue. Now that was then. Insofar as today is concerned, I think we have to move ahead today, and I do not see that issue being revisited today, because today the agenda is different.
So you will never support any non-democratic transfer of power in Bangladesh?
It is not for India to support or not support. I think the primary stakeholder, and perhaps the only stakeholder, are the people of Bangladesh. I think to expect India to pronounce on elections in Bangladesh would, to my mind, appear to be, from our point of view, a very presumptuous thing to do.
Because I ask this because Bangladesh has a history of having these unelected governments, military governments, non-democratic governments. So do you think India has a role to play in stopping that?
If you look at the kind of policies that India has pursued since 1947, I think broadly speaking, you will see that we have been very careful about ensuring that democracy takes deep roots within India. And we have built the institutions that are needed to ensure that we actually strengthen democracy within India. When it comes to what happens outside of India's borders, then I think we have a different approach. And that approach is predicated on many, many issues.
But Western powers do that very often,
Well, I think that's basically...
India is also emerging as a big power.
The difference between every country, I would say, has a different approach to how it deals with other countries. In the case of India, we ourselves were at a stage when we were developing our own polity and society and economy. And we were not really in the business of, let's say, promoting democracy overseas. That was not what I would say would be a defining...
If not promoting, what about defending?
Let's say, we have said again and again that how a country governs itself is something which the people have to decide. Insofar as external assistance is concerned, or the role of, say, outside powers is concerned, whether it's a neighbor or whether we are more distant, wherever it is required, wherever we have received a request, we have contributed in other manners. For example, in terms of capacity building, in terms of institution building, in terms of sharing of experiences. So these are the kind of ways in which we have tried to help other countries in strengthening their own democratic institutions. So I would say technical assistance, sharing of experiences, training, capacity building are the things that we have normally done as a matter of practice, whether it's in South Asia, whether it is in Africa, whether it is in other parts of the world. If people say we would like to learn from India about how to conduct an election, or if we want to learn from India about how to strengthen democratic institutions, we have been extremely forthcoming in sharing.
On the question of reciprocity, the present government in Bangladesh has addressed India's many concerns, especially security concerns, rather quite sincerely. I'm sure you would admit that. And the crackdown against the rebel groups from your northeastern region has been a continuous process. I'm sure you would agree that as the recent arms haul in Hobiganj indicates. But does it not worry you that such huge quantities of heavy weapons like anti-tank weapons, mortars, rocket launchers are finding their way here, perhaps on way to your country?
No, absolutely. I mean, this has been a principal thesis of our relationship with Bangladesh for the last many, many years, which is that we have to acknowledge that we have a long border. In fact, in our case, it's the longest border we have with any country. It is one of the most densely populated borders in the world. It is also one of the most porous borders. It's porous and poor and densely populated. And the unfortunate fact of this border is that because of the low income levels and low development levels, there is a lot of illegal activity also taking place. So we have always maintained that the security of India and the security of Bangladesh are closely interlinked, and that there is no other option except for the two countries to work together to bring about a border and a border area which is free from such activities. Neither Bangladesh can do this alone, nor can India do it alone. And if we have that level of political understanding between the leaderships and between the authorities of the two countries, it is only then that you can actually make concrete progress on the ground. Because there are people who are trying to disturb the peace. There are people who are trying to instigate instability in both countries. And I do not think that either country benefits from allowing such forces or such people to succeed.
So you consider it as a mutual threat for both India and Bangladesh. But most of these weapons originate in China, don't they?
I have no information about where these weapons originate. This is something which I would leave to the investigating agencies, and I think it is entirely their domain, and I would be hardly in a position to comment on that.
So you've said before regimes change but interests don't, and so you said a regime change in Delhi will not affect Dhaka-Delhi ties. What are India's permanent interests vis-a-vis Bangladesh that you don't see ever changing?
Well, let me say and clarify what exactly I had said. What I had said was that to the extent that interests of a country as a general proposition, to the extent that the interests of countries remain the same, and to the extent that policy is a function of those interests, then to that extent policy should also remain more or less the same. Now, when I made that statement and today, there is a big difference, and the big difference is that you actually have a new government in position. So the questions which were being raised at that time have to a great extent been answered.
So is that statement haunting you now?
It's not haunting me. What I'm saying is that today the President has made a statement in Parliament outlining the new government's priorities. And the new government's priorities have been very clearly laid out. And those, according to them, we have clearly got a priority for development of an integrated and an interconnected South Asia, a South Asia which is prosperous and stable, and the government is committed to building upon these relationships. Now, I would say beyond that, because these are still early days, but we have a presentation of a policy framework already. But in addition to that, because I know that there would be a lot of interest in Bangladesh as to what next. here I would only say, let us judge the new government by its actions.
Okay, China has already supported the present government in Dhaka, and relations seem to be moving into top gear with the Prime Minister currently visiting China. Has just finished her trip to China. Does this really worry India, that Bangladesh and China are moving closer?
Well, you know, I think it's highly presumptuous of me to comment on how Bangladesh pursues its relations with third countries. My remit goes only to the extent of what I do with Bangladesh. So I would not like to comment on how Bangladesh is conducting its foreign policy. That's the prerogative of the government and the people of Bangladesh. Insofar as the specific question of China is concerned, you see, the fact of the matter is that China, India, Bangladesh, Japan, we're all part of the Asian continent. I think it is well understood by now that we are all agreed that we must move towards a regional cooperative framework in Asia, in which we focus on the issues which are of paramount importance to the people of Asia. Our own relationship with China, for example, has evolved considerably in the last 10-20 years. And today, for example, last year in 2013, bilateral